A stunning week in the case that has gripped Connecticut, the Fotis Dulos story. Where does the case go now? One of Connecticut's preeminent legal minds is with us, Ryan McGuigan. Also, what is the mood on tolls? Insight from Kevin Rennie and Doobie McDowell, who will also reflect on another big story this week, the public memorial for Denise DiCenzo. Plus, former NFL player and Connecticut native Bill Costin on his amazing photographs of famous African Americans on this Black History Month. It's all straight ahead this Sunday, February 2nd, 2020.
From Eyewitness News, Connecticut's most watched local political program, this is Face the State.
Good morning on this Groundhog Day. I'm Dennis House. Welcome to Face the State. We begin with fresh insight into the Fotis Dulos case. He died this week, so what does it mean? With us, former Assistant State's Attorney and current defense attorney and a frequent guest on this program, Ryan McGuigan. And good to see you here on the program again, Ryan.
Good morning.
So the night that Fotis Dulos died, his attorney, Norm Pattis, said that they are going to make special efforts to try to continue this case, substituting him for his estate. How does that work? And
I don't know.
Will it happen?
I've never heard of it. So will it happen? I don't know. I've always wanted to be 6 feet tall. I don't think that's going to happen either. I've never heard of that. The case, as far as I'm concerned, will be nollied by the state, and then it will be dismissed because he's entitled to a dismissal. And that is the end of these cases, as far as anyone in the state of Connecticut is concerned. With regards to continuing the case via his estate to try to get some sort of an acquittal, I've never heard of that. I don't think that's the best thing for... I certainly don't think it's the best thing for the most important people in this case that are left, and that is the Farber Dulos children. And what's best for them is that this can just go away and they could have some peace and perhaps they can move on.
Does the case go away, though, for Michelle Troconis, Fotis Dulos' girlfriend, who, of course, is charged as being a co-conspirator in this case, along with Kent Mawhinney, his attorney?
They don't go away, and it's interesting because one would normally think that when the central player in a conspiracy is now out of the case, that for the two ancillary participants, that normally their case would get better. It would improve because one of the co-conspirators, the main co-conspirator, is not in the case anymore. However, they have other issues, other criminal issues. Mr. Mawhinney, or Attorney Mawhinney, has a violation of protective order. He also has the alleged attempted rape of his ex-wife, and then Mr. Troconis still has the obstruction charges, and they're all based on her misstatements, and so those charges exist without this murder, and so they still have they're in a lot of legal trouble still. You were a former prosecutor. Mm-hmm. If you're prosecuting Michelle Troconis, how does Fotis Dulos' death impact that? Does it hurt your case? On the obstruction case, no, it doesn't, because if you look at the statements that she's given and the conflicting statements that she's given, it'd be very difficult for the defense to explain away her clear misstatements of what happened on those days leading up to the murder or the alleged murder of Miss Farber, and then the days afterward.
And if you're defending her, what's the argument?
Well, if you're defending her, you say, well, the conspiracy with whom? Who did I conspire to murder anyone with? He's not alive. You have never found any body. And so, therefore, how could I be conspiring to commit a murder when there is no other participant?
So, reportedly, he left behind a suicide note where he professed his innocence. He did not indicate where the body might be if he was indeed the killer. What does that do for the family? They may never find her.
Unfortunately, it seems that the level of narcissism that Mr. Dulos was alleged to have maintained, he maintained it through the end of his life. And it seems as though we may never find, and these children may never have any real closure on the death of their parents.
Do you see the police perhaps going back and retracing his steps again, thinking, is there any additional place he could have perhaps dumped that body?
I do. I have heard. I do know from some sources that the efforts to recover her body were Herculean, and the number of cadaver dogs that were used, they were brought from the FBI. And so there was a Herculean effort to find this body, and I don't think that the law enforcement people that were involved believe that they can under these circumstances.
What happens to the people who were involved in putting up the bond? Do they still have to pay, or is it wiped out?
He is dead, and so hypothetically speaking, in cases like this, the bond is released. That is the end of it.
So they're done. Anyone who's an indemnitor on that bond is done.
Yes, because he's deceased.
I want to ask you, a couple weeks ago, you mentioned your mentor was Rich Colangelo, who was the prosecutor in this case. He was named Chief State's Attorney this past week. Some insight into how you think he will oversee the system in the state now.
It's an office that is dear to my heart. As you know, my father was the Chief State's Attorney for a number of years. And it was a division that I worked for, and it's a place that I love, and the people in it I love very much. And it warms my heart that somebody that I care for and that cared for me and trained me is now in the position that my father once held. And I do believe he was the best person for the job, and that he will do a wonderful job for everybody in the division.
What's his philosophy in terms of prosecuting crimes?
He is tenacious. He's a bulldog, but he's not bully. He's not a bully. He's fair. Yet he's a hard charger. And so he's going to serve the people of the state of Connecticut very well. You know,
I want to ask you, too, let's go back to Norm Pattis and Fotis Dulos and their relationship for a little bit. He was saying that Dulos' family in Greece wants to clear his name. How do you do that if there's no trial?
Well, you can just write a book if you'd like to. There's a lot of things that you can do, but you can't have a trial without a body. And this is a defendant. You can have a trial without a defendant being alive and standing there. So you can't just stand there with nobody and say, I represent an estate. There's other things that you could do if you want to profess his innocence. OJ is still out there professing his innocence, so you can go ahead and trumpet his cause.
And what happens in terms of the legal bills that were perhaps owed to Norm Pattis?
That I don't know. I can't speculate on that.
Well, in a case like that, when the client does die, does it go to his estate, or is it just the lawyer has lost out?
I've had both experiences, but for the most part, when a client dies, that's the end of the case, and that's the end of your billing.
Ryan McGuigan, always a pleasure to have you in the program, former Assistant State's Attorney and currently a defense attorney. Thank you, sir. In a moment, tolls. What is the mood for them right now as we approach the 2020 legislative session? We'll talk with Kevin Rennie and Doobie McDowell, and we'll also remember Denise DiCenzo in the big memorial this week, and it is Black History Month. We welcome you to watch past editions of Face the State right now on the WFSB app or on our YouTube channel.